Welcome back to the SMITE Minor League European Edition. As always, we've already seen how Cold Gaming managed to close their gap a little bit against Queso, but can we see the same thing happen again with Simplicity versus the boys at the top of the standings, Flashpoint?
Flashpoint's just been looking so good, man. I don't know. I feel like this team is just clicking on all cylinders as a unit, and that's really what impresses me the most. I mean, every player in the European Minor League feels like talent-wise they deserve to be there. It's just that Flashpoint has really separated themselves with teamwork more than anything else.
I think Flashpoint, the biggest problem they've had overall, really, Ryan, when you think about last year too, this is a consistent team that have time and time again done very well. Just last minute has caused issues for them.
Yeah, not having Dzoni when it comes down to the biggest games, certainly. I mean, he's your star player as much as the team is working very well together and as much as the team is playing very well. Dzoni's the guy, and that isn't a shot at anybody else in this roster. I don't think that anyone should think of these other players on the team as not as good as Dzoni. It's just that that's Dzoni's play style, and the rest of the team facilitates that very, very well. And so not only when you don't have your jungler for the biggest games of the year, and that's going to really hurt you in general, but when it's also your whole team's play style is set up around making Dzoni shine, it's going to be nearly impossible.
Think of it this way, the old energy squad, if they didn't have adapting 1 week, right, they were going to struggle because they played a lot through adapting. So it's the same sort of thing with the Flashpoint roster there. Now, other teams, Simplicity, however, this is a sneaky one that is full of players that are the same level as Out Cold for me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, former SPL pros, and that's that you would think that they continue to be the best, but they just don't have that same level of teamwork quite yet. That's the big thing for me. They do have some real stars on this team. I think that maniaK's had a pretty good phase so far. He's been looking pretty good. I think Genetics continues to impress me in the support role. But overall, Simplicity just hasn't been able to beat the best of the best quite yet in the league.
But what was the reasons for that? Is it objective focus? Is it just communication and team fights? Like, is it something that's obviously standing out a little bit more?
No, I don't think there's one thing that it's like, oh, well, as soon as they fix this, they're gonna instantly start winning, and that makes it more difficult. You know, that makes it a little bit harder to decide where you should be spending your time in practice. But I think that it also means that they're probably pretty close and that they don't have to fix everything. They just have to fix one or two things to do a little bit better in those facets.
And that's why this matchup is going to be interesting, because it is #1 seeded at the moment, Flashpoint versus Simplicity, who are sat at #2. Simplicity are comfortably second as well, with Queso dropping that set earlier on.
Yeah.
So this is a chance to try and close the gap on the first seed.
Absolutely, and this is where you have to make up that ground if you want to be the top end and come to the midseason invitational. This is so important for this team. And as well as for Flashpoint, I think that to go through, they only have one loss, I think, so far.
Just the one.
And that was week 1 when every team went through the first 2 weeks. All of the European SML was 1-1. It was all tied up. So they lost early on, and then ever since then has been really, really dominant. If they can continue and get through another game up against Simplicity with a victory, I think it just solidifies them even more, as if you need convincing as the top team.
Well, let's see how this set begins. Picks and bans are now on the way, and we're straight into them. Simplicity will be the first pick, first ban this time round, and we'll see what they do with that. Most of the time we've seen a lot of King Arthur, Merlins, Jormungandrs, Gibalonke.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of all the above, but
and then Horus and Set eventually, right?
Eventually, yeah. It's only a matter of time for them. Giannis being first ban, though, we have seen a lot of this as well, where first pick just kind of their first ban is something we don't really feel like playing against. It's not the strongest god in the game. It's just something that you like to play, and we don't really feel like dealing with it here. It forces Flashpoint, if they really don't want to give up Arthur Merlin, to ban both. If Simplicity want either of those, then they won't ban King Arthur here, for example, if they really want to play it.
It really is a throwaway ban, so to speak, but it's still focused on something. So Giannis and Gibalonke, Merlin alongside it, more than likely going to be King Arthur here, but what does that leave open?
Yeah, I mean, Flashpoint could leave open King Arthur if they wanted to. They won't, but they have the option. This leaves open the Jormungandr is a big one. Freya as well, though not every team's prioritizing her super highly. At this point, it's kind of a composition-dependent thing. Jormund is going to be the first selection. I don't think we've seen that much first pick Jorm. It's kind of been second pick on, whatever team has second pick, and you get something and Jormungandr at the same time. But outside of these 4 gods, or 3, Gibalonke, King Arthur, and Merlin, I don't really feel like anyone else is that impactful right now.
That's fair. You just give it a little bit of, availability, so to speak, in terms of what's going on with where Jormungandr is going to go. So you're not giving the game away just yet of like, okay, we're locking in King Arthur. He's definitely solo.
Sure. I mean, Jorm, I think, is a little bit more impactful in solo than he has been in support, but it does leave open some ambiguity, as does the Chronos. That can be for mid or ADC, though I imagine that'll be an ADC. It's not exactly a DeathPanter god. in my mind. I would like the Achilles, though, to at least consider going into the jungle. Achilles has been really, really heavily prioritized and picked a ton, and it really has been mostly in solo lane or support, and its win rate, if you saw, was pretty low.
It was.
It's just a god that I think is being slightly overvalued at this point, and that's how it usually goes, right? You get a god that is not really picked at all on the top end, and then all of a sudden he gets picked a ton, and then he keeps getting picked, but people have learned to play against him again, and he starts losing a lot. I think we're going to start to see Achilles scale back a bit in popularity.
Well, Johnny is in the game.
Yes, he is.
And so is Kuang.
Yes, he is.
Are you surprised?
Yes, I am. I mean, instead of the Giannis ban, that could have very easily been an Kuang ban.
Actually, that's a good point. I didn't think about that one.
Yeah.
We said throwaway ban, but against Flashpoint, there isn't really a throwaway ban.
No, just ban the
It's a
Kuang, man.
guaranteed ban.
But Simplicity had to know this was going to be the plan. Like, they had to expect the Kuang selection for Johnny.
They have to have. But not only that, we've got the Achilles too, so double executes this time around as well, which also puts more pressure onto Simplicity in terms of keeping your health pool high.
And they already have 3 magical damage dealers, so I love the 2 physical bans here from Flashpoint. Chernobog to take that away from DeathPanter in the mid lane as a double Hunter composition with the Fafnir, and then the Circuit as well for Faeles. That could have been a great setup selection, and just usually a historically good counter pick against Kuang because she has good early pressure where Kuang does not really match that.
Sol now locked in, more than likely for the mid lane here this time round. Jing more than likely going to be in the duo lane too. Does some Wukong ban? Are you a bit surprised by that by Simplicity?
No, Sibi's played a lot of Wukong so far this phase.
It's hard to gank too.
Yeah, it's hard to gank. It dives you well and gets you in execute range. Doesn't usually kill you himself, but can get you low enough that you're in execute range for these other characters.
I think it could be because of Jorm as well, because it's going to be Jorm in that matchup, and I don't think some Wukong's really, going to get struggled against Jormungandr.
Probably not.
A Muzen, however, now picks up by Simplicity too. More than likely going over to StreakUp. He's going to be playing that with Fafnir.
I think that's DeathPanter in the mid lane playing the AMC.
Really?
We've seen Herwin play a lot of the AMC in the mid lane. It goes well there. You get great mid-camp control. It also can reveal that Kuang pretty easily, consistently put dots on him. That also is what Arachne is for chasing this Kuang around the jungle.
Definitely, and see if you can actually... also the dots and the spiders going to cause problems with the angles. Bellona will be the last selection from Flashpoint. They did need a solo laner. It's definitely one of the go-back-tos for Sibi there, so to speak. If some Wukong's not available, he'll go for the Bellona. And
this means Achilles in the support role. There's a very aggressive composition in the early game from Flashpoint, with then great late game potential from the Kuang and the Sol and the Jing. I really like the well-roundedness of their draft. Flashpoint, on the other hand, are a little bit more early game focused in the mid lane and their mid jungle between the AMC and the Arachne, but then very late game focused elsewhere in the draft.
Looking at Flashpoint though in the early game, if we do see the supports starting the solo lane once more, Flashpoint definitely have an advantage there with Bellona Achilles at level 1.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck fighting that. You're going to have some trouble.
Well, let's get into game then and find out how the level 1 begins. The casters are standing by.
Thank you, Hindu. Thank you, Aggro. It's Finch and Totally on the call as we move into game number 1. And Totally, I find myself yet again casting a game in which Johnny for Flashpoint has Kuang.
So you're fearful of Ninja Dimmy, right?
I'm very afraid.
But how afraid of you are Johnny Kuang?
Even more so afraid.
Even more.
Yeah, the only difference is that this is relegated to the game, so I know that I have some safety outside of it. When it comes to Ninja Dimmy, you can never know or be aware of where he is unless he wants you to be, and so there's no true safety.
But what if Johnny is Kuang? Would you still be like afraid out of game?
Not as much now.
Really?
I bet Johnny wouldn't be such a big deal in a game. In game, though, he's very, very, very good on Kuang.
I'd be fearful of if he was Kuang out of game.
I mean,
that's not right.
I wouldn't be able to comprehend it. I bet it'd be outside of my understanding. But what I do understand though is that Flashpoint has a comp that can get rolling quick. They've got this Achilles for Fusify in the support role that gives them a lot of extra pressure that you might not normally have.
I'm really liking this magical ADCs for both of these teams between StreakUp's Chronos, FaraKrik's Sol. We saw a little bit yesterday in the console world how easy it was to burn some of these objectives if left unchecked. And that's kind of what happened under a tier 1 mid tower around the 8-minute mark this time around. I think FaraKrik, if he could just sit in that lane with a Hunter's Blessing, it's important for DeathPanter to recognize if his tower is safe or not.
Fusify blinks in to strip away the purple buff from Simplicity, who were trying to secure that one. So a nice work by him to catch them a bit off guard and use that aggressive support to the best level. But I'm right there with you as you talk about all these, all these basic attackers that we have here in the game. We actually don't even really have a traditional mage. The closest thing is Sol, who kind of feels like she's halfway in between with that heat passive. So yeah, a lot of focus on basic attacks on both squads, except only one team has Fafnir. and that simplicity with genetics on that one, so they'll be able to accelerate it even further.
I would almost consider DeathPanter as a Muzen comp more of a traditional mage, having so much burst damage. Fusify going to get stunned out, actually, and StreakUp the last hit.
That's first blood for simplicity, and they might want more. Kespainify in some trouble, though Dzoni is making his way in, gets the blink off before any bees come through, so he can indeed find a kill of his own, and now genetics might be in a spot of trouble, but DeathPanter and Faeles are rotating into FaraKrik, isolated by the Arachne, but the attention turns to Kespainify. The honey comes through too slow, and Faeles takes him down.
Still looking for more onto Dzoni. He'll be A-OK, so 2 for 1 at the end of the day. 3 kills in 2 minutes, favoring out simplicity.
And it absolutely favors them out because those kills almost certainly couldn't be on better targets. 1 for Faeles on this Arachne, and 1 for StreakUp on this Chronos to accelerate these gods who do so well when they can get ahead and get some items and really start punishing you. But to be fair, Johnny's out Kuang is also the target you probably most don't want to kill on if you're simplicity.
That's true. Accelerating to that mid to late game is a scary thought out of simplicity. So despite Kespainify dying, at least the return kill onto StreakUp was received. So therefore, not going to be able to get all the farm that you're really looking for to abuse the Jing way.
At least do something to try and slow it down. They got the entire dual lane, really, which is clearly meant to be trying to get this early aggression from the way he blinked onto purple buff to get started earlier. That's one more thing. You know, maybe if Fusify has another more team fighting relic, a sprint, a shell, something like that, maybe they can make their way out of there, but instead, not only is it this sort of greedy relic in the blink, he'd already used it, so he didn't have any extra help when that gank came.
High risk, high reward. It's not only a greedy relic, but it's a greedy kind of pick into that support position. The Achilles is one that really thrives off of early picks if you can find them, utilizing that 30% execute if you can find the damage, and it's very possible knowing that Johnny's looking for his double executes. It's a very momentum-based composition from Flashpoint.
It's a simplicity. You have to try and get out in front of it, as they've done so far a pretty good job of. They have a small gold lead, I imagine, thanks to them being the ones that are able to find that first blood, the experience entirely normalized at this point. And you heard them talking about on the desk that simplicity just is almost certainly going to be in a good spot when it comes to this late game. Muzen, Cobb, Chronos, I mean, the Jormungandr are going to be rotating into. How much pressure's on Flashpoint to really get ahead in the early mid?
I don't think there's that much pressure as you would think, because despite all the good late game from simplicity, Flashpoint has some late game of their own. Johnny's out Kuang is never one to be not considered for late game threats. FaraKrik Soul, Kespainify, Jing Wave. She gets rolling on the persistent gust agility combo, chasing down multiple members. Sibi can also lock down DeathPanter and StreakUp to the point where you're mitigating a lot of their DPS. And that should kind of make it lopsided for Flashpoint. I actually favor the Chaos side if it gets to late game.
I just fear they might not have enough control totally compared to these two Guardians. Fafnir, once he transforms to the Draconic Corruption, and Jormungandr. I think if Flashpoint could be the heavy aggressors like a Death Ball, then you might be right. Faeles, though, might be experiencing the Death Ball a little bit sooner, has to go into the ultimate very early on just for the safety. And Flashpoint commit very little to force the ultimate out from the Arachne.
Fusify was looking for an angle to blink in, potentially, but instead going to look to invade the speed buff, checking to see if it's up. DeathPanter going to drop the honey to stop them, or at least to poke them out and zone them away. And if they just kept on going, they would have seen that speed buff up, having a 3-on-2 advantage while Faeles was still rotating. Could have been a small window, especially knowing that Faeles' ultimate was down. Genetics had to use that defensively, but instead, playing it safe, grabbing their own speed buff.
Yeah, I wonder if Sibi maybe made a call that he wasn't able to follow maniaKK. maniaKK kind of lurked in the jungle, and just being away from the lane and not knowing where he is might have been enough to where Flashpoint were like, okay, well, we can't afford to get Jormungandr ganked, and just got out of there. So, as you said, a nice safe play from Flashpoint, recognizing they can't afford to go that far forward.
And even if maniaKK was still in lane, you still got to respect the world's serpent rotation. Yeah. So whether he's in the jungle, whether he's in lane, he could be at that speed buff at the drop of a dime. Purple buff going to go to Flashpoint. This Chronos versus Jing Wei matchup after that first blood favoring StreakUp. He's had this 1-level lead, winning the race in the Hunter's Blessing, trying to finish off magical lifesteal item. Kind of curious as to where that's going to go.
Yeah, I am as well. We'll keep our eye on StreakUp and what his path is here as yet another skirmish over these mid-harpies begins. Faeles last time had his ultimate forced out in the spot. This time, he won't even step forward. If they're going to rotate 3 to that, then that's likely going to belong to Flashpoint every time. And just like that, Flashpoint actually have brought the gold lead all the way back to basically even they've done a really good job making up for that early loss around the first blood and can truly be the one to the driver's seat playing around these two warriors.
And both junglers are definitely making their presence felt. I would say Dzoni on the blink, making it their rotation on the left side. Faeles kind of finding the return kill after the fact. And these junglers are important to allow their mid laners the momentum they need. The buffer, as you will, the front line presence from Faeles, maniaKK, Genetics in the late game could be a problem if Flashpoint are trying to dive the backline as well. So it's not actually the front line that you got to be considering. It's the backline for both of these teams that's going to be exposed, because aggression from both sides. And even though maniaKK, Genetics is playing these double Guardians, having more quote-unquote, air quote, control as Kespainify, going to have to use that airstrike to prevent the stun from StreakUp. It's more of the damage difference, more than the control. And the damage should heavily favor Flashpoint.
Faeles in some trouble, and again forced to use the ultimate defensively. This is still early days for an Arachne, so she's not looking a whole lot to be the aggressor herself. And Dzoni has recognized that they've been the bullies, pushing this Arachne away from her farm. Faeles now has the Golden Blade completed, but really has not had much time to himself.
There's a bit of a power curve that you're expecting Faeles to get once finishing off the whole Katana tree. Not getting boots has been a common strategy in Season 6 with the addition of the Swiftness Elixir, being able to still get that 18% movement speed after not having boots. So that's why you want to stack movement speed on all the Katanas. Golden Blade so you can clear the jungle fast, and then at level 9, you'll finish off that Hasten Katana, so your ganks are going to be stronger. And that's why Dzoni is making these rotations on the back camps, trying to hurt that power curve of the Hasten Katana.
Not the only one with an interesting start here in terms of items. DeathPanter went with the Blackthorn Hammer before the Talaria boot for the Muzen comb in the middle lane. StreakUp also, we're wondering where he was going to go with that item. Pythagorean's piece looks like how he closes out that first item in his build as well. So not items we always see, at least not this early on, for some of these picks. And
it's about the lifesteal, specifically from this item, Pythagorean's piece. Allied gods within a certain amount of radius is going to get an additional 12% lifesteal. Magic power is getting increased by 30. Even physical lifesteal increased by 10% with physical power by 20. So a kind of a utility style item, which is not only going to help himself, but Faeles if they're on the same exact target. DeathPanter and StreakUp should be holding hands in the late game.
I think so too. They're going to have a ton of extra damage in the back line. I don't know if that item necessarily has to be bought first, especially if StreakUp's not looking to fight with everyone else, but certainly a good one for him as Faeles yet again has the ultimate forced. FaraKrik Supernova has already been used, so Genetics responds by dropping his own Draconic Corruption. Now Dzoni in trouble. He's been hit by that Stinger, but Genetics clips the wall, and that buys time for Dzoni to leave. In fact, now DeathPanter might be in trouble. He's stunned, but the Fatal Strike off the mark.
Oh, such an important ability to connect, because now Fusify is going to go down without hitting the execute and not resetting it. He had no way out. DeathPanter didn't have Aegis, so that would have been a free kill.
And that's the gamble that's supposed to be there for the Achilles. But so often we see them able to hit those executes and get right back out. So a nice job avoiding it there by DeathPanter, and Fusify ends up punished. And really that whole engagement goes awry. But I don't even know if they should have gotten an opportunity. If Genetics had been more aggressive onto Dzoni, or had been able to land on him with that jump, he might have fallen earlier on too.
Definitely agree with you there, Finch. DeathPanter connects that Stinger, forcing Dzoni on back. Without Purification Beats, he had to wait out the duration of the debuff, the cripple debuff, before he can water illusion away. And DeathPanter, surprisingly enough, goes into the thick of the heat of battle to pick up the Stinger. Normally unadvisable in that kind of scenario.
And he makes it back out of there. So Simplicity, despite what we thought from Flashpoint with this aggressive support pick for Fusify, it's been Simplicity who've gotten the better of them in these engagements. But remember, this started off with yet another commitment onto Faeles on the Arachne, and even though the ultimates have been defensive, he's gotten out of there every time. They really have not done enough, I think, to punish him to make these starts worth it. In fact, he has 2 kills to his name because they committed onto Faeles, and Fusify was kind of low and pushed forward. Then the rest of Simplicity engaged on the back end.
Getting a little tankier, now picking up that stone-cutting sword, with extra mobility to be able to get out of the thick of things. It's so difficult to lock down an Arachne that's jungling with a speed buff consistently, having this much mobility between two katanas. If you don't have like an Odin to be able to cage after the Arachne lands, you're not going to lock her down.
Sibi in some trouble. He went to proxy farm and is not even going to be able to land the stun from the ultimate because Jormungandr goes into the World Serpent. Simplicity also get the gold through in the back end. That's a win on both sides as Sibi goes down. Now the Order side looking good.
Genetics enabling everyone with the Fafnir transformation. Attack speed extra for DeathPanter. StreakUp burning that objective to the ground. 11 minutes in. Simplicity getting plays on the right and the left side of the map.
Well, this is what I was saying, right? That I didn't know if the Pythagorean's piece made sense this early, but if they're going to be grouping up around this Fafnir on the AoE Coerce, then it's perfect. That is so much extra damage from the Pythangs, from the Coerce. They're going to shred through any objective. Pyromancer goes down, Gold Fury goes down, and they lose Sibi. That's a bit of a nightmare for Flashpoint.
I mean, with 20 extra physical power being shared between not only DeathPanter but Faeles, so that's 40 total. StreakUp's getting 30 extra magical power.
And the spiders that Arachne was dropping as well on top of it before it started with the webs. Yeah.
Genetics with the extra attack speed boost from the Coerce. Doesn't even have Shogun's Kusari as he finishes Gauntlet of Thebes just now. Probably going to work on this just now as that 4th item slot. And that Gold Fury goes down pretty quickly, but the next one respawning at 4 minutes, Finch, probably goes down even faster.
Well, I love what we're seeing here from Simplicity so far. And now Flashpoint have not been able to get enough value, I feel like, out of this Achilles early on. And as much damage as they're going to have, and I think you're right, they're going to have it, I just don't know if they're going to be able to beat this objective-focused team that is likely just better in team fights too. I mean, this is starting to get scary. I mean, StreakUp now has Bancrofts and the Pythangs. He's getting up to 100 levels of lifesteal.
Normally a team that's ganking the soul lane, that person getting ganked, their team is the one doing
that's why it's
Gold
such a nightmare.
Fury. And that was just so obnoxious for Sibi. It's like, hey guys, I'm getting ganked. It's like, oh, and we lose the Gold Fury? The worst nightmare for a solo laner, and it's not even done with the action on the left side of the map.
Fusify already at half HP. He has the tank boots, has the Gauntlet of Thebes to try and make him sturdy enough to go in for these engagements, but so far the poke from Simplicity has also been strong. As you said, DeathPanter might be the closest thing to a traditional mage in this game right now, and he's letting you feel it with some of that ranged damage it can put out. Those bees in particular really chunk.
It's going to be hard to lock him down. Just as difficult to isolate the Arachne with all this mobility. DeathPanter goes to Laria boots.
Oh, yeah.
Using the hives for extra movement speed, and now this item, which is 25% movement speed. How do you really catch anyone from Simplicity? maniaKK with the World Serpent, StreakUp, Accelerate.
Yeah.
You got Genetics being able to use 1-dash ultimate and then apply the 2nd dash.
It's a very slippery team for Simplicity. The only kill they were able to get was StreakUp, I believe, before he even had the rewind available to him. That was in response to First Blood in dual lane. So you're right, even that kill will be very difficult for them to replicate later on. Flashpoint are going to need, I imagine, an execute from Fusify to land, or they'll have a hard time nailing anybody.
And that one kill you're talking about onto StreakUp was at the 2-minute mark. It's been 12.5 minutes since Flashpoint was able to do anything this game, and that's not the best way you want to start off a best-of-3 set.
No, not at all. As this drafting phase for Simplicity has now bled over into the actual game and given them a nice advantage, though Fusify still holds on to a good bit of an experience lead over Genetics at this point in the game, so that means the window on capitalizing off this Achilles is certainly not closed yet. You know, the difference between having a Guardian and having a Warrior over here eventually, that advantage does start to fade, but it certainly has not yet.
Look at all these cost-effective items maniaKK's picking up. Dynasty Plate Helmet, Stone of Binding, Void Stone, items that are sub 2,000 gold outside of the Void Stone. So he's ready for battle around this mid-game. We're approaching the 16-minute mark. His presence at level 15, he's constantly applying the CC as long as he's knocking people up, even applying some of the slows with the spits. Could be a good way to enable DeathPanter StreakUp to do even more damage on those targets that get their protection shredded.
This is such a team fighting composition from Simplicity. That's all they want to do. Even the Toxic Blade here to prevent any healing coming out. There's not even a ton of it from Faeles too. So whatever bit there will be, like FaraKrik self-heal, Fusify has some as well. If there's lifesteal there for Dzoni, he's going to limit all of that and make sure that he can even cut out like what Berserker Shield, all that stuff. So the Toxic Blade can have some value too.
But Flashpoint are also preparing for team fights. The Shogun's Kusari for Sibi's Bellona not only helping him get off more procs of Scourge or Shield Bash, but also the damage from FaraKrik, Kespainify, even Fusify's damage as a support Achilles, as long as he's in the shirtless stance, which it looks like he is, going to be able to just chunk.
It is summertime, and Fusify enjoying it just like everybody else. Oracles spawn in right ahead of the next Fury. And the Oracles will certainly go down. Looks like they were split. But that's not what Simplicity are the most concerned with. They know that they have a comp that can burn through this Oni Fury quite quickly. So if they can get a little bit of positional advantage, they'll have it. But Dzoni already chunked maniaK, putting out a ton of damage. I'm taking plenty in return as well. Has to use that ultimate to get out of there.
Going to be able to escape for now. A 5-on-4 power play for Flashpoint if they want to take it, because Kespainify was thinking about rotating around the corner. Fury is started without the World Serpent. That is a big ultimate Flashpoint can abuse.
I definitely agree, but he teleports back in to the mid lane tier 1, so at least his physical presence will be here. But remember, without the ultimate, Jormungandr is not a hard target to all in and kill right away, especially because, as you said, he's gone kind of cheap in his build, so he might not be as tanky as you expect. Flashpoint might have a small window to capitalize on as Fusify goes in right away. StreakUp and Faeles as early targets, but Faeles starts to force him away. In fact, Fusify might need some assistance. He barely escapes, and now Sibi wants to all in on maniaK, drops the Eagle's Rally, but the long-range damage from DeathPanter and StreakUp way too much.
FaraKrik and Dzoni have to retreat. Fusify is going to try to peel as Faeles goes in the back line, but Genetics to follow up.
And no one can stop him. Now Sibi going to fall as well. Faeles just jumps into 4, and without any cooldowns, he's able to wreak havoc. That's 2 that go down, and maniaK's not done. He knocks up Fusify as well and forces him out. The whole rest of the team can burn away at the Gold Fury.
Oh, Dzoni going to heal up so much there. Fusify without the Fatal Strike. You can't find it there. Dzoni not even using the ultimate because you can't displace the Jormungandr to find the Kuang execute, but you could always Fatal Strike him.
Always can find the execute that way, but the Oni does indeed go down in favor of Simplicity, and they win the fight 2-for-1. maniaK, life is forfeit at the end. He went to zone. I think maybe he thought he had a chance to kill Fusify, but with Dzoni there, he was never going to win the 2v1. So probably an unnecessary death for them to secure the objective, but at least they win the fight.
So here's the thought process for maniaK. It wasn't even to zone. He went to submerge. He saw Kespainify backing with 25% health. A squishy Hunter at 25%. You find the knockup. You get off the shake. You're killing that Hunter every time. But then he's like, oh, he backed? Okay, well, let me see what I could do to Fusify. And then, oh no, here comes a different kind of serpent on me, the dragon.
Yeah, he definitely was not expecting to have to deal with Fusify and Dzoni, so an unfortunate death there for maniaK. If you're on the side of Simplicity, Flashpoint, of course, happy to see him take a spill. But now this Arachne becoming scary, 4-0-1 for Faeles, and level 17, the Chronos, highest level in the game at 19 for StreakUp. And really, that's what impressed me the most. Sibi had the right target choice on the maniaK, but as soon as that team kind of jumped into that choke point, DeathPanter and StreakUp just bombarded it with damage from range, and it chunked everyone on Flashpoint down so low.
And Faeles able to really capitalize off of the retreat from Flashpoint. Everyone was grouped up, that ultimate providing such a good slow genetics following up. It was such an easy opportunity for Simplicity's backline to follow that front line with Faeles and genetics so far in the thick of things. That's when we're starting to see this level 15 of Muzen and this level 20 Chronos start to race up in the damage department, more so on the Muzen than the Chronos.
Yeah, they're in a pretty scary spot now, is Flashpoint. They might have let Simplicity's late game carries go a little bit too unchecked for too long. They certainly still have plenty of firepower of their own, but you saw in that last fight, it's just so hard for them to lock anyone down without being punished in return.
The problem for Flashpoint is they can't find any individual picks the way they did at the 2-minute mark, because Simplicity is playing together so well. Now Shogun's Kusari picked up for genetics. That DPS is going to just escalate further out of DeathPanter and StreakUp. So Dzoni, once he gets in, if he doesn't find the execute, he's just going to get taken out faster than the damage he can deal in return.
There's a lot of respect for the healing from Flashpoint here, isn't that? A Pestilence after the Toxic Blade from Faeles and the Brawler's Beatstick from DeathPanter. It's not a ton of dedicated healing. There's like a bunch of small self-healing sources here on Flashpoint, but these are also just cost-effective items. I mean, Pestilence is not a bad magic defense item, even if there's not a ton of healing on the other side.
That's right. For 80 magical protections, 200 health, that's cost-effective for sure. So I respect that. If you're going for one magical defense item, it's not really the Bulwark of Hope that you want. You want the extra 20 protections instead.
That's right, but looks like they might have had the right idea. Typhon's Fang coming out for Dzoni. It looks like Flashpoint is to some extent committing to that self-sustain that we talked about, so limiting that from Simplicity is just one more factor that's going to make life hard. Kespainify was waiting on StreakUp, but I think Simplicity was waiting on him. Immediately Faeles comes through, the knockup's there, but he goes right up into the ult to slow down Dzoni and FaraKrik. Supernova cuts off the fight so they can find their escape path.
What a clean disengage. Simplicity recognizing that FaraKrik was about to drop the Supernova, immediately press the S key on their keyboards to just retreat.
Tier 1 tower now under siege, but with maniaK here, they can look for the defense. FaraKrik takes a ton of damage before he makes it into the Disapparate, and maniaK can chase him down with the World Serpent, but he's got backup now, which means that he'll certainly reconsider going in any further, but the Tier 1 tower defended, and again, Flashpoint can find no means of ingress.
Not wanting to overcommit to that Tier 1 tower. A great defensive hold from the Guardian in the solo lane. maniaK able to play defensive pretty well, only having that one unfortunate death after the Oni Fury. But now, considering rotating on the right side of the map, it would be very ambitious for either team to go for this, knowing that it's a 5-on-5.
I like this, though. This is what this comp is designed to do. Genetics transforms into the Fafnir. AoE chorus coming out. It's only going to hit StreakUp until DeathPanter and them group up. Now they're grouped, so they have the damage. But still, Flashpoint haven't made their way in. maniaK is such a huge frontline. StreakUp follows up and fails, gets the kill, and he has to Fatal Strike away, so they don't have to worry about the execute. Sibi comes in as well with the Thorns procced, but unafraid of Simplicity, they turn right to the back line.
Oh, maniaK is dangerously low, submerging, thinking about going back in. Fails, gonna isolate Fusify. A StreakUp takes out Sibi.
It's just too much damage from too far away. Flashpoint can't afford to contest. Simplicity do an excellent bait. They force in the hand of Flashpoint and get 3 kills for free. I don't think they're gonna head right back to the FG just yet, but that's a one fight.
Faeles' build is really starting to show its power and strength. The damage onto Fusify was too much for him to handle. The anti-healing prevents anything on the return side, and even without Hasten Katana. I thought it was going to be Hasten Katana, but instead a Toxic Blade. As long as Faeles has speed buff and applies the web slow, which he did on Fusify, he doesn't need that gas pedal effect from Hasten Katana.
Faeles goes in aggressively 1v2. And goes up in the air to try and follow FaraKrik out to Disapparate, but the job is done. He's been forced out, but the damage from maniaK forces out Aegis, and into the World Serpent he goes. Fire Giant now all but guaranteed, with the only 2 members alive zoned out, but Dzoni loops in the backside. This out Kuang damage finds the execute, and Faeles goes down. Some signs of life from Flashpoint as Dzoni keeps on the gas.
Still not going to aggress further, knowing that Kespainify is a little bit low. Simplicity, get the Fire Giant, get the Pyromancer, so only losing Faeles is a good situation for them to start plucking away the 4 remaining towers out of Flashpoint.
Man, this composition has come to fruition, and to be honest, totally the composition's only half, right? Drafting something that can do a couple things well is only one thing. Simplicity has played to that perfectly. I love the way you highlighted their disengage over here by the Gold Fury when FaraKrik goes to the Supernova. This team is clearly communicating well. You saw the same thing on the Fire Giant. They started up, they are in the middle of committing, but when maniaK on that front line shows that StreakUp and he have kill potential, the rest of the team follows up and they bait in Simplicity.
Finch, this is going to be a base race. Sibi with Kespainify. Okay, no, it's not. They're going to defend their Phoenix. They don't want to give that up against the Fire Giant side, but it looks like all of Simplicity are going to play defense, considering that they were only getting the Tier 1 tower while Flashpoint were already chunking away at the Tier 2. Sibi had the Shogun's Kusari, which would have enabled Kespainify getting the towers and Phoenixes even faster.
It is nice for Flashpoint to be able to find some gold somewhere. They're only down 6,000. It's not exactly the end of the world. They're not even really that far behind experience either. It's just a matter of how much does Simplicity get from this FG to push that lead even further out of reach. If Flashpoint can hold on and not give up too much, they're certainly still in it.
The web and the honey is so obnoxious.
That is
for Flashpoint.
Awful.
They have 1 sprint from Fusify. They're going to need to start picking up some winged blades. And they do have one, only on the support. Sibi working on another.
Yeah, I think Sibi has one, Fusify have one. We'll see if that's enough for them, man. It's just one proc, right? Yeah. It's just not going to get you away from all those slows. Like you said, a lot of reliance on that sprint from Fusify as well. As in he goes to try and find the stun to StreakUp. It's not there. maniaKK counters and does a much better job. Forced out Supernova defensively, and now he can knock up the entire team. The tier 2 tower earned by the space that maniaKK creates. Flashpoint fall back.
A good disengage from Flashpoint. StreakUp connects the stun onto Fusify, and not wanting to get fully stunned after the first initial tick, uses Fatal Strike defensively. No possible re-engage from the Chaos side, and that's not a bad look when you're the defending side, only losing your tier 2 tower.
We'll now go grab the minion wave before they push the tier 2 and left. And Flashpoint are going to defend again, at least show a defense here, but Dzoni might get caught out. Simplicity have recognized he's over here. They'll actually blink in aggressively from Faeles. That means water illusion from Dzoni, and he still makes it out. All the while, their minions approach the tower, though good clear from FaraKrik.
Tier 2 tower on the left side being thought about defended from Flashpoint. They don't have the blink from Fusify, which is what they used initially under the tier 2 mid tower, so I'm kind of worried about how they're going to engage this. Simplicity still have the Fire Giant buff for another couple of seconds.
Well, Dzoni should have communicated that Faeles' blink is down as well, so they don't have to worry about that. But he's just walking down Dzoni on the right-hand side and losing the trade. Johnny's able to come out on top. That does mean, though, that Faeles has to use the ultimate to get away, and the left side tier 2 tower still stands. This is what I was asking for, totally. Flashpoint are not giving up any more gold for free.
That's right. Sibi actually did ulti over that back camps trying to help out his jungler, but it's Genetics jumping in, maniaKK to follow up.
Yeah, they found Flashpoint pushed too far forward. Fusify already has to retreat. Sibi locked down as well from the stun from Genetics, and it's his stun, his kill. Tier 2 tower down, and Genetics keeps up the chase. FaraKrik and Kespainify, the only 2 healthy members left, though Johnny's lurking to the right.
He's looking for somebody, literally anybody. Faeles could be a good target, but he does have Purification Beads. Not going to be the easiest to execute. Still a good defense from Flashpoint. Yes, they do lose Sibi and their tier 2 tower, but as long as you're holding on to these Phoenixes, this 10,000 gold lead is not as scary to deal with.
They've kept it much closer than it could have been and limited the impact from this Fire Giant. I can't believe that Faeles is still losing that trade totally. He's got 2 anti-healing items and the Pestilence up against Dzoni, and he was still losing the 1v1. Now, Dzoni did use beads to get away from the stun, which might have helped Faeles a good bit, but even still, he was standing toe-to-toe with this Arachne.
The Demonic Grip is a big deal. The magical protections is not going to be enough to deal with it. And to be fair, like, Dzoni's still healing quite a bit, even through the double anti-healing from Faeles, so the damage has to be respected because Faeles doesn't have the highest health pool to play with.
And you're exactly right. Sometimes when you just go kind of that one item in, and again, he does still have the stone cutting try and help in some situations too, to give him a little bit of prots, but still, clearly Dzoni must be respected on this Kuang in the 1v1. He might be the toughest guy to take down single-handedly. As Pyromancer now under siege, and Flashpoint, they don't just want to defend on tier 2s, they want to be here for the enhanced Fire Giant as well. They know Simplicity only need a small window to bring it down.
I respect Flashpoint's decision not to try to defend that Pyromancer. Better idea to just wait out some of those abilities and go for the Fire Giant defense. Last time, at 23 minutes, Simplicity go for a straight-up 5-on-5 Fire Giant. If they did that then with only a 2,000 gold lead, I don't see what's stopping them from doing it now with a 10,000 gold lead.
That's right. They threaten so much the ability to burn this Fire Giant. The Flashpoint have to step further forward than they'd like to be ready to defend at any moment. So Simplicity know they have that card to play at any time. Shell is still down for Genetics, another 20 seconds or so on that. Perhaps waiting until they have that Shell and those beads for the fight before they start it up.
StreakUp pushing the right side of the lane while maniaKK was zoning with a slow from his spit. Dzoni on the left side, isolated from the rest of his team under the tier 2 tower. maniaKK keeping eyes on the Dragon King. Just going to back on off.
maniaKK is willing to be that front line for them, but it looks like they've transitioned from a Fire Giant to threatening the tier 2, and Flashpoint have aptly repositioned as well, so they know they could be here to try and slow this down. No Fire Giant buff from their own Simplicity, and they struggled with the tier 2 tower siege even with that advantage, and Dzoni still lurks in the jungle, hoping they'll forget he's here.
But maniaKK still knows exactly where he is. Fusify gonna get stunned out, knocked off as well. No real follow-up, still feeling healthy at 90% health. And it seems that Flashpoint really are keen on defending all of their Tier 2 towers.
And they know that they can still fight this team and that it's still close, and if they give up too much of a lead, they won't be able to. Keep in mind, though, Faeles has finished the Kin size. I don't believe he had that when he took the duel with Dzoni last time. That's so much extra damage for these Arachnes. He might be the one you no longer want to 1v1.
That's right, but Dzoni with a hasten ring should be able to chase out targets. It could be even maniaKK that's isolated, trying to chase out the Dragon King. Still looking for the long-range poke is Simplicity. Dzoni now in a 1v1, going to heal up from the water illusion, slowing out Faeles as well. 4-on-3 on the right side of the lane as Simplicity push forward.
They do get some good damage in, but in comes Sibi with the Scourge to slow them down. But the return damage even better. Jormungandr has come to join the fight. Remember, he's never too far away. Kespainify can't even make it out. The dots from DeathPanter remove him. Now FaraKrik in trouble too as the Serpent continues to zone away, but he's got backup coming in, and Flashpoint fall back to Phoenix.
maniaKK had to Thorns, Genetics had to Shell with the one
Yeah.
pick onto Kespainify.
Yeah.
5-on-4 advantage. Accelerate is going to chunk away at the first right side Phoenix.
Man, they didn't even have a minion wave for most of that. That was through backdoor protections, the AoE cores on these 3 damage dealers, and the Shoguns, all this extra damage amplification, the Pythags. I mean, you saw it, man. They don't need much time. 6 seconds or so, and it's down, even without minions. They can now look to come back to FG. Though low on mana, a couple members low on HP, and not ultimates, they might wait for now.
I mean, these are 6 item slotted DeathPanter, Muzen, StreakUp, Chronos, almost at their final form until they sell their boots and pick up some 3K potions. So I'm not surprised that the Phoenix fell as quickly as it did, with or without the minions. No Fire Giant to enhance that damage boost in numbers. But Flashpoint, they were defending those Tier 2 towers for as long as they possibly could, keeping the experience still relevant and trying to catch up in the item department. FaraKrik now working on a 6th item, picking up the Telekind's ring.
I like this idea. Anything he can do to try and make these autos more impactful. I don't think the problem is that he doesn't do enough damage. I think the problem is that he can't get into range. I mean, maniaKK and Faeles have been working together to create such a difficult pathway in for FaraKrik and for Kespainify to actually do damage. Look where they are on those charts. I mean, FaraKrik in particular, a good bit away from DeathPanter. His counterpart has been able to get in plenty of poke from range.
And with Kespainify being the only real physical damage dealer from Flashpoint, Bellona not too much in the late stage with this utility-style build. If he gets bullied out, then it's all magical damage, and Simplicity has enough magical defense to deal with this. But a fight on the right side, Sibi incredibly low.
Eagles rally up down, and he meets his immediate end. StreakUp is the one that claims his life. Now the big knockups come through from the Jormungandr, and Faeles rips Fusify to shreds. Dzoni is still nearby and plenty healthy, but he'll find no way in. Simplicity continue to take these team fights cleanly.
Sibi in his last dying breath goes up and down with the Eagles rally, trying to use those protections and extra damage for his team to play cleanup, but instead probably would have wanted to use that ultimate defensively on the retreat. Now with a 5-on-3 power play for 30 seconds, Simplicity will not be stopped getting the enhanced Fire Giant.
Well, Faeles points out where Dzoni is and takes the 1v1 duel. Meanwhile, Kespainify and FaraKrik come from the north side, and Faeles wins that battle. Dzoni goes down. Enhanced Fire Giant now for Simplicity. Kespainify and FaraKrik have to run for the hills. This Simplicity team is the one that's putting it to Flashpoint, the top team right now here in SML Europe. They've drafted quite a comp, and they've played it successfully.
And this is against Flashpoint's out Kuang onto Dzoni, something that he's known for, just absolutely decimating teams at any given notice. You thought that right side Phoenix fell down fast, Finch, that middle Phoenix with the EFG even faster.
Even faster. Now they want to push in. There are 4 members of Flashpoint up, so this will not be free. But it definitely is still one in favor of them. Genetics goes into the Draconic Corruption to provide the cores for the squad. And so now they isolate Fusify. Fatal Strike is used for him to retreat, but maniaKK, remember, he has the ultimate and can chase anyone down. The rest of the team turns around to fight the rest of Flashpoint, though. StreakUp is Scourge. He cannot fight with the Disarm. Gets away from the Supernova. And Simplicity can't quite end things just yet.
Oh, they want the kill, though. Odds of Fusify gets the combat dodge off. maniaKK with the last hit, finally. And the sustain from the Fire Giant should be enough. Genetics almost canceling the back out of Sibi, but no. playing it very safe. Simplicity want to get the last remaining bird before the end.
And if they can force an overcommit from Flashpoint, that wouldn't hurt either. Remember, Genetics' ultimate was just ending, so they didn't have quite as much strength as they once did. But look at the poke FaraKrik takes just from stepping up. It's so difficult for them to get in range for their own damage.
That one time rift completely decimates FaraKrik. Now Dzoni has to retreat after going in. Great shell saving DeathPanter.
What can he do against this comp? There's just no way in. FaraKrik in trouble too. Aegis buys him a moment and Faeles is right there waiting, but can't lock him down. Left side Phoenix goes down as well. StreakUp finds Kespainify, and with just Sibi and FaraKrik here waiting, I think that the advantage is entirely Simplicity's. They still have the enhanced Fire Giant buff on their entire team. They storm into the Titan room at Flashpoint. They just can't hold on. Simplicity take game 1, even against Dzoni's Kuang.
And what a game it was. 9-1-8 for the opposite jungler. Faeles on the Arachne.
What a great
getting
game,
off to a great start. That gank on the dual lane really mitigating what Dzoni was able to do after the kill from StreakUp.
They also just itemized entirely to try and mitigate him, right? All that anti-heal, the pestilence for the Arachne as well. They were like, if anyone's beating us, it ain't gonna be Dzoni, man. We are shutting this guy down.
It was just pure movement speed from this Arachne. Loved the build. It worked out to fruition. Once the rotations from maniaK occurred, that Void Stone, the Stone of Binding for extra penetration, enabled the damage from StreakUp, and also you can't forget the Fafnir pick. That was a big deal for the double Hunter comp.
That's exactly right, man. Way too much attack speed, power, synergy, whatever you want to call it. It worked for Simplicity. That's just game 1, though. Can they do it in game 2 as well? Let's ask the desk.
Well, we'll find out momentarily when we get to picks and bans. But first of all, let's just recap game 1 a little bit. Stomp. I mean, not really a stomp as such, I guess, because it lasted a long time, but that was a very one-sided affair in terms of the KD.
Yes, Simplicity definitely looked very clean in this game, and that's the big thing. We said during picks and bans that they're giving Dzoni Kuang, there has to be a plan, and they clearly had one. They highlighted it there. Pestilence and Toxic Blade for the Arachne. Tons of penetration, a good amount of protection for maniaK as well, but maniaK can't really get executed by that Kuang, so he's not quite as worried about it. This double Hunter composition just burned these objectives so well. I think that Simplicity definitely understood that Dzoni was going to be a problem, and even when it started going really well for Simplicity, you know, they get a Fire Giant, Dzoni still manages to get a kill. He's got all 3 kills for Flashpoint at that point. You know, you're always... anytime Dzoni's on Kuang, I feel like the game is never truly over until we're killing the Titan.
I do want to say, though, I think like Faeles this year is starting to step it up. I don't mean step it up, I think he's always been there, but it looks so much better than the SK days of last year, right?
Yes.
I think that's what we're starting to see a little bit more of. His Faeles is coming up more and more in these situations, and it was a battle of the junglers, this one, for the most part. Both teams played through their junglers.
Absolutely, yeah. Faeles looked very, very good on this Arachne. Not the first time he's played it so far this phase, but certainly a big pick for him. That one was huge. The dot damage actually killed Dzoni while the execute animation was going on.
If you actually saw that replay too, you could see the beads cooldown was actually on cooldown. And just 3, 2, oh no, I need the ult, I need the ult. I've got a beads out, I can't do so. Here's a little look at where everyone felt towards the end of the game. StreakUp ended up second on the list of gold. I was going to say first, but Faeles did pip him to the post there.
Yeah, 9-1-8 is usually a good way to get a lot of gold for yourself. An impressive scoreline.
Talk about StreakUp real quick though. Pythag's piece first item. What's that about?
Yeah, especially when the supports aren't in your lane a whole lot. It's not exactly what I would have gone for.
But you say that, but then that is lifesteal and sustain, right? Which is something that you do want in the dual lane anyway, so you can continue staying there.
But then he goes Bancroft right after that.
Right.
So Bancroft is just better sustain than that. And I think that Pythag's piece is a good item once you get to the sieging phase. And he probably could have gotten a better power curve had he gone Bancroft's, Boots, Demonic Grip, then Pythag's. It ends up, then you're getting your item right as everyone's starting to group up. Though they did get a couple early Furies, and that extra power for himself and for DeathPanter and for Genetics and anybody else who's on that Fury with him, it does end up mattering in the end. So maybe that was the plan all along, and they knew they were going to be grouping up going for 7-8 minute Furies, and Pythag's piece is super strong there.
Does Flashpoint change things up here? Maybe take first pick for themselves and ban Arachne so they can maybe slip Kuang through?
Yeah, I mean...
Is that a bad call?
No, I don't think so. The problem is if they take first pick, then they can't pick Kuang and then immediately ban Arachne Circuit. The advantage of being second pick here, if you're Flashpoint, is that you get that last pick before the second ban phase and then can ban away those 2 junglers who can give you real problems. Whereas if they're in that first pick slot, they pick Kuang, and then there's still another pick before the second ban phase where that Arachne or Circuit or any other counter pick could go.